After completing the second series of cuts, test the fit again. Now there's a good fitting dovetail. After setting your router bit's depth of cut, you need to locate the fence and position the selected joinery template so that all of the cuts happen in the right places on your stock. This is accomplished through a setup process called centering. Whether setting up for box joints or dovetails, the simple steps to follow should always be used. Begin by sliding your selected template into one of the available scale slots in the LS Positioner's carriage. Don't worry about final positioning just yet. When preparing the stock for your box, also cut a 6-inch long piece of 3/4 inch stock to the exact same width. We'll use this piece as our centering board. Mark the center of one end of the centering board. Now visually align the mark with the approximate center of the cutter. Slide the fence up to the edge of the board and then lock the carriage in place. Turn your router on and using a good rubber-soled push block, cut a groove along the entire length of the board. Turn the stock end for end and repeat the cut. If you widen the groove on the second pass as we did here, you're slightly off center. Just one final step, however, will bring the cutter to the exact center of the board. Turn off your router. With the cutter at its widest profile, slide the centering board up to the bit. Holding the board against the fence, unclamp and move the fence to visually center the cutter within the groove. You can fine-tune the position using the micro adjuster. When you see an equal gap on both sides of the cutter, lock the carriage clamp in place. Now slide the joinery template to align the suggested center cut directly under the hairline cursor. You'll find the selected center cut for your template listed under the diagram of your chosen pattern in the Master Reference Guide. It's okay if some portion of the template overhangs the rear of the carriage. However, you can slide the template further into the carriage and simply choose a new center cut. On an equally spaced template, any mark can be used. For information on choosing an alternate center cut for variably spaced patterns, see page 4 of the Master Reference Guide. In the 3 joinery techniques to follow, half-blind dovetails, corner post dovetails, and through dovetails, all of the examples shown reflect stock preparation and centering based on 2 3/4 inch wide material using the Dove J pattern. If you set your depth of cut for a 1/2 inch 14-degree dovetail bit, center your LS for 2 3/4 inch wide material using 7B on the template for your center cut. Then prepare your stock accordingly for each joint type. You'll be able to duplicate the example shown cut for cut, a good way to warm up to the new techniques shown. Begin by watching the half-blind dovetail section, since many of the tips and techniques shown and fully described in that chapter may be mentioned only briefly in the other dovetail chapters. Now, let's cut some dovetails. After centering, set the LS fence to a position where the router bit is only exposed a 32nd of an inch or less. You can test this with your centering board. This position is referred to as the scoring pass. Lock the carriage and slide the Lexan measuring scale to read 0 under the hairline cursor. We'll start the tail boards beginning with a dovetail-shaped rabbet cut made across each end of both boards. The scoring pass will shear the fibers of the wood to start the rabbet without tear out or splintering, and is a good technique for any rabbet or edge cutting operation. The full rabbet width needs to be about 7/32 of an inch wide for the Dove J template we're using here, but rather than making this cut in a single pass, we'll take out the material with 3 subsequent cuts, moving the fence back 1/16 of an inch for each pass. While this does add a little time to the rabbet cut, it yields a smoother cut result. You'll find the rabbet width listed under the diagram of your selected pattern in the Master Reference Guide. Apply light downward pressure to keep the tailboard on the table, and use your rubber-soled push block to move the piece through the cut. Now we'll make the through cuts to produce the tails. Add your right angle fixture to the end of the fence and tighten the thumb screw to secure it. If your router table permits, clamp the fixture to your table edge with a spring clamp. Place the two pieces with rabbets facing away from each other on the faceplate of the right angle fixture. Push the boards down and against the fence, then secure with a wooden hand screw clamp. Remove the spring clamp. Return your fence to the scoring pass position at 0. The first cut for any tailboard will always remove the edge of the stock. To keep this first cut clean and splinter-free, you should always begin with a scoring pass, then sneak up to the first template mark in front of the 0 in 1 or 2 passes. Once you've reached the first mark, 5A in this example, and made the cut, simply move the LS Positioner from A cut to A cut until you've cut across the full width of the material. Keep in mind that your first tail cut will be based on the width of stock you have centered on. It probably won't be 5A, and it may in fact be a B cut. After completing the cuts, clamp your right angle fixture to both fence and table, flip the stock, and re-clamp to the fixture with your wooden hand screw clamp. Now return the fence to a scoring pass and repeat the tail series of cuts. Since your LS Positioner is set up with respect to the center of your stock, you don't need to worry about which edge of the tailboards are against the fence when flipping the stock on the right angle fixture. Again, after you sneak up to the first A cut, move the LS from A cut to A cut until you've cut across the width of your stock. This completes the tailboards. For the pin cuts, move the fence to the first mark of the template, which positions the bit outside the fence. 6B in this example. Since the pin sockets are stopped cuts, bring the stop positioner just up to the outside diameter of the cutter and clamp in place. The vertical stop arm on the shop stop should be above the cutter, but slightly below the thickness of your pin board. This stop setup will always produce a socket that is a little short, so we'll only cut one end of one piece at this time, then adjust as necessary. Move the stock into the cut until you just touch the stop arm. Don't force the material against the stop. Now move from B cut to B cut until you've cut across the full width of the material. Assemble the pin board to one of the tail boards to determine how much you need to adjust the cut length. The amount that the tails protrude is exactly how much the stop needs to be moved away from the cutter to achieve a flush fit. Use the scale on top of the fence as a reference and move the stop away to lengthen the cut. Return the fence to the first pin cut and repeat the cuts for both ends of both pieces. When using the rubber-soled push block, position the push block about 1/4 inch or so behind the forward end of the board. This keeps the pressure in the important area of the cut. Also, keep the push block about 1/4 inch or so away from the fence. This allows you to see that your wood is against the fence at all times. Always blow the table off between cuts, since a tiny chip between the board and the fence can easily change your cut location, while a chip underneath will raise the board, changing your depth of cut. Assemble both pin boards to one of the tails. Then add the other tail board and drive the tails home. There, a perfect half-blind dovetail. For this decorative joint, you'll need the same 4 pieces required for any half-blind joint, plus a piece of contrasting color stock about 8 inches long to make the corner post. All should be the same thickness and width. After centering and installing your selected dovetail template, set the fence to a scoring pass position and lock the carriage. Slide the Lexan measuring scale to read 0 under the cursor. Clamp the right angle fixture to your fence and table, then clamp your 2 long pieces with a backing board to the faceplate using a wooden hand screw clamp. You can use your centering board as the backing board. Remove the spring clamp. After making a scoring pass cut, advance to the first template mark in front of the 0 in 1 or 2 passes. Once you've reached the first mark, 5A in this example, and made the cut, we'll simply move the fence from one A cut to the next until we've cut across the full width of the material. Keep in mind that your first cut mark will be based on the width of stock that you've centered on. If you've centered on a 2 3/4 inch wide material as we have using the Dove J template with 7B as your center cut, your cut locations will be the same as ours. After completing the cuts, slide the right angle fixture to the end of the fence, clamp it down, and flip the stock. Always make sure that the stock is securely down on the table and against the fence before clamping. Remove the spring clamp. Return the fence to a scoring pass position and, beginning with this cut, repeat the A series of cuts on these pieces. Always use a smooth feed progression, pushing forward smoothly and pulling back smoothly. To make the corner posts, set the LS to the first B mark on the template that exposes the cutter in front of the fence and lock the carriage. Using a rubber-soled push block, cut a groove along the entire length of the corner post material. Now move the fence from one B cut to the next to cut the grooves across the full width of the corner post material. At your table saw, we'll use a miter gauge with a wooden sub-fence to cross-cut the corner post stock. Place a cutoff from your box material against the blade and mark the sub-fence as shown. Advance the corner post stock about 1/16 of an inch past the mark on the subfence and cross-cut 4 pieces. Now we can glue the corner post pieces to the 2 A-boards cut earlier. Use a brush to apply glue to 2 of the corner post pieces. Then apply glue to both ends of the mating box side. Slide the corner post pieces onto each end of the box side and center so that the corner post overhangs each face of the larger piece slightly. We'll sand them flush later. Place scrap wood clamping cauls at each end and clamp. Wipe off excess glue squeeze out with a damp cloth and set aside. Then repeat the glue up procedure for the remaining pieces and set aside to dry for about 30 minutes. At your sander, sand the corner posts flush with the face of the larger pieces. Reverse the piece direction to avoid over-sanding one end. After sanding both faces of both pieces, turn off the sander and then use the stationary belt to remove any squeeze out or overhang of the corner post along the edges of the material. To be clear, we are sanding the dark corner post pieces flush with the edges of the lighter piece, not the other way around. You do not want to change the width of the larger pieces. From this point forward, all we're doing is using standard half-blind dovetail technique to join the 4 rectangles of wood. To cut the tailboards, we'll begin with the dovetail-shaped rabbets. Move the LS to a scoring pass position and lock the carriage in place. The full rabbet width for the Dove J pattern we've selected needs to be 7/32 of an inch wide. But rather than making the cut in a single pass, again, cut the rabbets with several light side-by-side passes, moving the fence back 1/16 of an inch for each cut. Now it's time for the through cuts. Clamp the right angle fixture to your fence and table and place the two tailboards with the rabbets facing away from one another against the faceplate. Press the boards securely against the fence and table, then clamp with your wooden hand screw clamp. Return the fence to a scoring pass position and make the cut. Now advance to the first template mark in front of your 0 position in 1 or 2 passes. Once you've reached the first mark, 5A in this example, and made the cut, simply move the LS from A cut to A cut until you've cut across the full width of the material. After completing the cuts, immobilize the right angle fixture by clamping to the fence and to your table, then flip the stock.